It is common in contemporary culture for those within the homosexual and so-called transgender movements, and for their advocates in the broader society, to portray themselves as crusaders seeking justice for supposed marginalized groups, successors to the champions of suffrage and racial equality in times past who simply want a more just society. While it is right to crusade for justice, what separates the movement for racial justice in the 20th century was that they were advocating against injustice based on the genetically determined trait of skin color, something they had no choice to receive. In contrast to this, advocates of the so-called transgender and homosexual movements are waging war against the just condemnation of their repeated intentional choice to engage in and to celebrate morally depraved sexual activity, in the one case, and reality-denying language and behavior in the other. The cause for racial justice and the homosexual and transgender movements are separated by the morally relevant distinction between unchosen biology and chosen behavior. These chosen behaviors were once kept back from the mainstream of society, as most of the culture recognized that the sexual depravity and biology-ignoring behavior and speech in which the movement's participants consciously engaged deserve the moral stigma and scorn that the participants now try to portray as some sort of injustice. Unfortunately, in contemporary Western culture, where the only sin of sexual ethics is to acknowledge that there are sexual sins and concrete limits to what we can do with our bodies sexually, the advocates of these movements now succeed in the attempt to call good what mainstream culture once rightly recognized as evil. The celebration of evil as good and condemnation of good as evil has in recent years come to the fore in contemporary society in ways that ordinary Westerners find shocking. Grown men dance in thongs at drag shows in front of children who are encouraged to put money in what skimpy clothing remains on the men's bodies. Teachers work behind parents' backs to transition kids into a supposed opposite gender and usher them towards surgeries that will chop off healthy body parts and towards hormones that will harm their health and reproductive system, ultimately leaving them unable to have children of their own. Librarians equip their libraries with sexually pornographic books meant for kids, and school administrators approve the teaching of similarly sexually graphic material in the schools. Yet the parents who protest such perversion are demonized and treated as if they were actual or potential domestic terrorists. Hundreds in a pride march declare, "We're here, we're queer, and we're coming for your children." And yet an objection to the movement's attempt to sexualize children is enough to get one canceled. Attempts to reason or dialogue with those in the movement are shouted down with trite chants of youth whose binging on Netflix and video games leave them insufficient time to enlighten themselves beyond the indoctrination they received from activist college professors. The penchant of these mobs of youth for physical abuse of those wanting to argue for the truth is justified by the absurd claim that words are violence, thus throwing under the bus the constructive discussion that has been at the heart of higher education from the Greeks onward to the present. So egregious is the vitriol, violence, hate, and perversion of children and adults in the two movements that many who once were spiritually skeptical struggle to find a better explanation than a powerful demonic force operating in and through the two movements, as if the moral decline of our culture left Satan free to finally show himself without disguise. The transgender movement wants to go beyond even this, however. It is not content simply to let each person decide that he is male or female or whatever other gender he wants to make up or use. Instead, the transgender movement insists that whatever that person decides about himself, everyone else must agree that he is what he claims to be. We sanely do not insist that other people must describe us by preferred adjectives when talking about us in the third person. And so even if a man declared that his adjectives are intelligent and handsome, none of us are forced to refer to him as that intelligent, handsome man when talking to him or about him. But when it comes to sex, or supposed gender, if a man decides that he is a she, everyone must also call him a she. If a woman decides that she is now a man, everybody else must now call the woman a man, and the person who refuses to do so and insists that he treat pronouns as we all treat adjectives is smeared as a hateful bigot. This advocacy of compelled speech inflicts still further harm onto society beyond those harms just described. In the eyes of the contemporary transgender movement, one of the worst possible sins is to dead name someone, to call them by the name they had before they supposedly changed genders and adopted a new personal name to go with it. The sibling to dead naming is misgendering, To call someone a male when they now self-identify as a female, or vice versa. Or more generally, since purportedly we can now make up any gender we want, to call someone by a gender that is not the gender to which they ascribe. It is said that to use a person's adopted pronouns is to be kind and loving and to show respect to the transgender person. In contrast to this, the traditional usage of pronouns and of words denoting the male and female sexes, a practice that goes back to the dawn of mankind, has been to use such words to denote objective features of reality. Such usage sorts human beings into two classes based on certain objective biological features that are readily discernible.
Thank you for listening. Credible Faith is a global missions-minded apologetics ministry with content available in 7 different languages across 7 websites: German, Russian, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and English. If you would like to support the global apologetics work of Credible Faith, go to crediblefaith.org and click on the donate icon. If you would like me to give an apologetics workshop or participate in a debate at your university, or if you would like me to give a Great Commission missions conference or apologetics conference at your church, get in touch with me through the Contact Us section of the Credible Faith website. You can also submit a request through the website to get Credible Faith's monthly email. If you are a native speaker of Russian, German, Italian, French, Spanish, or Portuguese, and if you notice that an essay from the English website is not available on the Credible Faith website for your language, feel free to get in touch with me about translating the essay, and I would read through your translated material for quality control and the desire to see content from the essay made available in your language. Thank you for listening, and have a great night.